Welcome to the Lucky Orange Show, where we teach you how to unlock the potential of raw data and shape it into stories that grow your business faster. Let's get into today's conversation.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lucky Orange Show. I'm your host, Sean McCarthy, here from the team at Lucky Orange. And today we are continuing the march into data storytelling, making better use of all that data that you're collecting. And this episode today, this conversation that we're about to have, will be a great companion to what we had in the last episode, which was hyper-focused on applying data to content marketing, both content marketing strategy and having data sitting at the center of your content itself. And I think what we're doing today is opening the aperture a little bit from content, which can be a great tool to grow and differentiate your brand. And we're going to look at brand. We're going to talk about the role that data can play in achieving brand clarity. And who better to talk to about brand clarity than the founder and CEO of Jayne Agency and the founder of Clarity University, than Brooke Foley. So Brooke, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Thanks. Super excited to be here.
So in your work, I already mentioned it, Clarity University, the Jayne Agency, the word clarity is very much a cornerstone. So let's just set a definition before we go too far. What does that word mean to you? And what do you think of when you think of brand clarity?
It's the reduction of noise, really. And oftentimes when you talk about strategy, it is also the definition of deductive, or what you don't do. So for us, clarity is when you can see and there's alignment around what you see within a brand. And we focus specifically on the 10 assets of a brand platform. So if you take a team of 7 people through 9 to 10 exercises and they get to the end and they're all in agreement and alignment, the organization has clarity on where they need to go from culture, operations, sales, market share, marketing, finance, cash flow, all those things.
I imagine, you're talking about the benefits of clarity. I imagine then that when we look at a brand that's lacking that, and that may be how they arrive to you many times, what should a brand do to say, we think we have some symptoms of this? I think that we're lacking clarity. What would that show up as on the day-to-day or kind of week-to-week process for a business?
I love that question. I love how you asked it too, because it is a diagnostic process, and it feels bad when you don't have clarity, but you don't know that that's what it is always.
Sure.
So we do a lot of social media to educate on what that feels like for people. And it sounds a lot like these 5 things. So one might be, we are responding to a lot of RFPs and we're just not seeing any of them close. Or, our clients are asking us for price reductions right now. They're asking us to they're asking us to reduce our prices but do more. So the first one, when you see that there's a lot of RFPs but you're not getting them, is really a sign of positioning. So when people go out and they procure or ask for RFPs, they're looking at people's positioning. We need to, they themselves have something they're trying to achieve. So we need something to be faster, or we need to be less costly, or we need it to be specialized in this way, or we need it to be innovative. And so they look at businesses within a category and they go, okay, these are the ones known for X, or these are the ones known for Y. And if you're on a short list and you keep getting asked to produce something and you keep not getting that, it means that your positioning is not matching with the RFPs that are coming to you. Whereas if you're being asked to reduce pricing, or you're getting low bid conversion, what's really happening there is that the value that you sell is being commoditized or not valued. So your promise is off. So those are 2 really, really powerful symptoms.
Yeah. And I imagine it also then trickles down even as far as, meetings and internal communication and things where teams just constantly feel like they can't get to the answers they need to get to. That the end result of projects kind of leaves them feeling flat. And I imagine there's other things that internally are really just feeling misaligned when they're not chasing a clear brand vision.
Yeah, it typically, from the internal standpoint, you'll see that there's a lot of restlessness. It's hard to make decisions. It's hard to agree on something. You might meet on something 2 or 3 times, and the end result still is not satisfying. Or someone will be like, okay, this is it. And then someone's like, well, is it though? It's because there's not alignment to be able to use you can't lean into the brand platform as a lever to be like, well, I know everybody really likes what we're talking about over here, but this is our positioning. And that's outside our positioning. And if we're going to go outside our positioning, then we need to go all the way back to how are we earning money for a living?
100%.
And
Yeah.
it's that intense sometimes.
When it's funny, the word brand, I see this happen a lot on LinkedIn when people are kind of like, well, what do you even mean by brand? Well, I think that, that is also maybe another completely other podcast discussion. But what we're talking about here too, in positioning and alignment and brand, I think brand shows up as a distribution advantage or a product advantage where you say, we're the kind of people that build this kind of thing for this reason, for these value themes, or we distribute it in this way. That's just who we are. Well, that's your brand. The colors and stuff takes care of itself because it's informed by that. And I think that a lot of people who are just getting into the idea of, well, what can our brand be, are going to go to logo, and they're going to go to colors, and they're going to go to, what social channels we should be on and that stuff. But the meat of it is getting work done against against a clear path forward. And you talked about, I think you mentioned something off the bat that was around evidence-based brand elements and this process that you take people through. When you think about, and I think that's the right phrase, is evidence-based brand elements. What kind of evidence are we talking about here when you go through this process with people? And how do you fit that into getting people out of this sort of clarity? I'm not going to phrase a new term here for you, but clarity chaos. How do you
I
get
think
people
that
out
is
of
a new good
how
term.
do you get people out of that and move them towards something more potentially successful?
So we take people through 10 assets. 9 of them are objective, and you can, within an hour's period of time and group alignment, you can confirm the evidence behind them. Sometimes there's a gap, then you have to go out and research it. But the 9 assets are technical. So they're your goals, objectives, barriers, strategies, insight, your your audience, your insight, position, promise, and support. Those are all things that within a period of time with the right questions, you can actually get to an evidence-based point on that. And each one has a different type of evidence inside of it. Whereas the last one, which is tone and personality, is subjective. And a lot of the unrest that you see in the market around, well, I needed to work on my brand, and somebody went and you mentioned this before, like they're investing in the logo. The logo is really an output of tone and personality, but it really is based on and meant to protect the company based on the rest of the other 9 sub objective assets. So if somebody's really just focusing on the subjectiveness of an identity or development of it, you're leaving the company open to risk. And I'll take you through like a very quick little story on what we mean when we say evidence and why it is that way. So if you go in and you like Google on your NICS codes, like, how everybody pays taxes, right? As a business owner, you have to declare what your NICS code is, what you're selling services inside of under what category. And if you go in there and you type in brand, it talks about branding livestock. And so if you think about it, the indicator or the marker on the livestock, whether you think that's cruel or not, is about protecting the asset. Now let's talk about that, like, right? Like it's the asset of the business, and it's meant to be able to protect the herd or the investment that that rancher or that business owner had. So if you say like that's all the way back to the beginning of when this became categorized, it's still today the same technical thing. You're protecting the assets of which you've invested in under a brand that signals that that's fine. When you break it down like that, it stops being so mythical and it stops being a creative thing. It's not an awareness tactic. It's literally a function of your business. So the 9 assets, technically, each one has a different piece of evidence. So for goals, you can start with your P&L from last year. You either did or didn't make it, right? And this year, you either do or don't have the resources to achieve the goal you set. If you don't, you have to adjust it. For barriers, you can see the evidence in your barriers. You can see the amount of complaints, returns, the lag time, the turnover, the meetings that didn't get resolved, as you mentioned earlier. Like you can create those barriers and then you can create the evidence and then you can create a path by which to turn the barrier into a strength. So,
Wow. Yeah. I love the idea of brand as being a protective element. I imagine a lot of the conversations that the team that you're having is with executive levels or with people who are top level decision makers, do you encourage them to communicate what you've just said in so many words to the rest of the organization as they say, hey, we're making these shifts with our brand, kind of like operationalizing the outcome of working with you and saying, we're heading in this direction and here's why and here's how it protects us? Is there a recommended way to kind of translate that? Because I know that a lot of times we'll have these conversations, and I've experienced this myself, where I'll have a conversation about positioning and it'll get pretty esoteric or whatever, but we'll have a good outcome and we'll all be on the same page. And then it's like, well, shoot, there's a bunch of other people in the room who have to action on this. How can we pull them along and make sure they understand what's happening here? So that's kind of a long-winded way to ask if there is a recommended conversation you have with people and you say, after we're done here, it's important that you go this, and this.
We usually have that conversation beforehand, and
Okay.
I'll explain what that means. So, oftentimes we'll recommend that in the early stages of starting to think through what those 10 assets are and how to codify them, we'll pull information from the larger employee base, sometimes partners and sometimes clients. We hold that off until we see where the leadership and the people that they've chosen to bring into that conversation, where they net out, and then we'll reconcile that going into the next meeting with them. And so we have a view of what's going on. We know where their heads are at. We understand where the gap needs to be, and we're able to counsel along. And then once that gets settled and reconciled, we do what's called a rollout, where you gather people together, and it's important that people understand that not only is this repositioning coming from a place of your voice, they need to be able to see that what they do every day and what they're paid to do and what they believe they're there to do is really what the company values. And if it's not, then that's another reconciliation. And that oftentimes is one where we see that a lot with 501c3s, where there's a board that believes in the original mission or why they think they're on the board versus the executive staff versus the staff itself. And there's usually like three different perspectives on what the 501c3 is really in service of. So you see that also, like when somebody is a founder and they've created something, it goes out into the market, the audience or the public uses it differently or the way that they wanted. And there's like a tension between like, well, we didn't build it for that. And that adjustment is usually pretty important also.
I mean, yeah, brand definitely, it's really what people perceive of you. And it's one of the definitions we'll offer is what people perceive. So it's less about what you're putting out there. It's kind of that end result of the perception. I imagine in that initial pull of data and gathering different opinions and gathering different sources, voice of the customer does come up. And I think that is a largely untapped data source for a lot of companies. I know there's some companies that are really, really good at it, but I do think that it's overlooked. How do you pull in voice of the customer metrics, survey metrics, these things that people are oftentimes sitting on? And how do you balance that against the C-level person bringing in revenue reporting to the conversation? How do those two things kind of work together towards clarity?
So one of the pre-qualifiers of us working with someone is that I will typically say in the business development process that we're not the right fit for everyone, because that's accurate and I have evidence on that. But also, our clients need to be willing to lead as much as they need to be willing to be led. And then the third is, as a user-centered oriented company, we start with what we go out and find evidence on from the customers, from the partners, from the employee base. And so we'll hold the founder or the CEO or the business leader's opinion, not that we don't care for it, and that's it's actually the opposite, but we'll hold that over here as we get that definition. And what we're really doing is saying, look, it's as important what people believe that is going on as it is what you wish or want it to be. So you can be producing something for 21 years and you're out there delivering it. You have a position and you have a promise, but the world is valuing it differently. It doesn't mean you're not doing it. It just means that they're valuing it differently. And I went through that myself. I started an ad agency. I was a digital marketing company when we started. And I really believe that's what people valued for us. And one day I looked around the company and I was not comfortable with the company at all. I wasn't comfortable with the projects we had pitched and won. Like I went out and pitched it. I did that to myself. I wasn't comfortable with the values I was seeing and I did not like the portfolio. And I realized there was a real problem and had to take my own medicine. Went out and we surveyed people and what came back was not that they didn't value us for awareness at all. What they were valuing us for was this word clarity. And I was like, nobody's going to buy that. People aren't going to buy that. But it was clear. It was like 100%. Like the clarity that we gained through this process, the clarity that is in our marketing, the clarity that's in our messaging, the clarity in our teams. And so I had to go out and I hired someone to interview people because I just didn't believe it. And we've had clients do that to us too, where they're like, no, that can't be. That can't be. That's not why I started this company. And it's like, yeah. So I can either fight it or I can embrace it.
Right.
And so we did.
And markets change, so maybe years ago the word clarity wouldn't have made sense to people, but it does. It absolutely does. And we experience that in maybe to a smaller degree sometimes, where people will tell us how they're using Lucky Orange, and we'll say like, what are you talking about? You're tying these, you've got this integration that we knew obviously existed, and you're tying these things together. It's really cool, but it's not what we expected. And then maybe it'll start to pop up more. It's like, okay, that needs to inform our product roadmap and how we view ourselves in the market. And kind of speaking of that, we talked about surveys and voice of the customer, competitor research and market research. I think when people go to do a brand refresh or go to build out a new brand, they'll look at competitors. They'll say, this is what I want our website to look like, things like that. How do you how do you protect people from themselves of saying, I just want it to look like this, and then ultimately becoming a copycat or just some iterative version of a cool brand? How does competitor market research fit into brand clarity?
Such a great question. So if you take the category and you go, okay, these are the competitors in the category, and you look at their positionings, oftentimes they each stand for something that is resonant in adjacent markets or not even related markets, but have leaders of that type of either values or attribute or something. And so what we'll do is we'll pick things out of the competitive space that we know is appealing to the leadership team, and we'll either prove out that that's of value for them, achievable for them, relatable for their audience, or we'll prove out that it's not. So we'll debunk it or we'll validate it. And then once we validate it, we'll then take them down a journey of outside their category. Here's how others are excelling at that. So it's not just I want to look like this, but how do you become great or excellent at what you want to stand for versus just taking the green fees entry of what's happening?
I imagine you have some outbound efforts, but a lot of it is probably, hey, I saw you. I really like what you guys do. I want to work with you because I think we have a problem. When somebody thinks they have a brand, and we've already kind of hit on this, what this might look like, but when somebody thinks they have a problem and it's a brand problem, what's usually happening there? Is it a brand problem? Is it mistaken for something else? Is it just that they need to shut their doors and call it a day? Or what does a brand usually look like when they think they have a brand problem?
The only time I have encountered a situation where someone should shut their doors is when there was fraud involved.
Hmm.
And
Not a brand problem.
I say often, clarity isn't something we can take back. You can't unsee it. You can't undo it once it unfolds.
Hmm.
And when it starts to really unfold, it unfolds rapidly. And so it's one of those things where like it's out in the room, and if it's a good thing, it's amazing, and if it's not a good thing, it's really you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. Um, don't think I've ever, and I'm looking over there, which is my thinking spot. We talked about that earlier. Um, I don't think I've ever encountered a business where I think they should just shut down. I think there's things that we as business owners and business leaders do that are habitual, or what we think is right, or what we believe. And to really lead, you have to function based on what is known and what makes sense. And in the brand strategy process puts a whole bunch of things that we as business leaders and contributors deal with every single day. So it might be over here in our head or over here. We think it's in our heart or we think it's there. And I think you said something earlier like, brands are what we perceive. They're actually not. Brands are based on technically what you deliver or promise to deliver every single day, day in and day out. It's actually a very functional
Mm.
solution that marketing and advertising as an industry have created a lot of emotion around. It's really a transaction. Like you are the right audience, so you are going to give me $3 after I spent $1 to talk to you. You believe that you're going to get what you get for that $3, or you're going to let people know you were not happy. That's brand, right? And so what happens is the brand strategy process starts to put things in focus. Like if I'm saying that I want to earn $7, but I'm going to continue to really believe and insist that my audience are people that are never going to spend that $7 with me, I'm going to be bankrupt. But we do things like that in our business every single day. And we don't really have good challenges or places to stop and think where we can align all of those discrepancies in our conversations and in our thinking patterns. And so that's why you see in the team rooms that it's unsettled, or you can't get to resolve, or it just keeps turning into something else, or the deal can't get made, you can't get it closed, the investors back off. Like there's reasons, and it's because it's not really clear. But when a brand is clarified, when you go through and each asset is codified and aligned, then the 10 assets put the organization and the team on fire. You're like functioning in a way that is high performance, and you can see it in a company. Like you can be at a trade show 3 years in a row and you see that a company is sort of like they're showing up, they put up their booth and the team is there and they're sort of, can't wait to hit the bar. But one year, all of a sudden, they're just like on fire. Like they own the show. You can tell something happened, and you're like, what was that? And it's because their brand came into alignment, whether they used my process or someone else's, or someone just inherently, naturally was able to organize around those things. But you see, everyone comes together and it's like they're all marching the same way. They all have the same energy, and you can feel it and you can see it. And sales has confidence that what they're going to sell is what production. Operations is going to deliver. Operations trusts the sales team. Accounting is able to collect on things because it makes sense for what someone believed they bought. Like it moves through the whole organization like just a really happy pill.
Yeah, 100%. I've experienced that on the content marketing side when it's kind of like I understand what I'm supposed to care about and what I'm supposed to feel passionate about when I'm representing this business, and I know how it's connected to where we're heading. So, for example, and I say this regularly in this show, this isn't like private thing. Like I think that CRO tools like Lucky Orange need to do a lot of better job for the users. I think that the CRO tools need to help you understand what you're seeing inside the platform. And I've said that a lot. And that's leading towards something. That's leading towards our tools, hopefully doing that for people. And that has rallied product and it rallies support to say, we want to help you accomplish this. We know getting to the insight is a challenge. And so I totally feel where that can go and helping people get in line there. For a service-based business, for somebody that is going out and having salespeople offering deals and stuff, this may be a part of the 10 assets. So forgive me if I kind of
No.
overlooked it, but when you work with people to push for brand clarity, do you see them go and shift their offer? So when I say it's a brand problem, it could be a product problem or a service offering shape up problem. I imagine then they go run off and say, well, wait a second, the service needs to be refactored. The pricing model needs to be refactored.
Mm-hmm.
You see people head that
Absolutely.
direction. Okay. Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick little anecdotal story. We worked with a client who, when we first started working with them, they said, look, we're local. We cannot go outside the tri state area. Our clients will not reimburse us for our travel expenses. They just don't value us enough. We just can't charge them to do that. And we were like, really? Okay. We ended up doing research for them. We went through the brand strategy process. There didn't seem to be any indication in there that people didn't value them. But what they hung their hat on was a 21-page report that had no typos and gave clear next steps. And that was great, right? It sounded great. We went into research, and the customers, it was clear that the people we were talking to were not in the tri-state area. They were all over the country. They were phenomenally loyal, and they were talking about things that the company did that were fantastic and not about that report at all. And so we started asking some questions. We were like, okay, can we pull this thread and see what happens? And it turned out that the value that they were providing was that they were saving people hundreds of millions of dollars, and the client would pay any amount of money for them to travel anywhere they wanted and put them in any hotel they wanted, because they were not just saving them money, but they were bringing communities back online quicker. They were solving problems in a way that the competitors and the other people in the industry in the category were not. And it was affecting communities. It was affecting livelihoods. It was affecting supply chains in ways that were, the difference between an organization being offline for 3 years and then still needing training versus getting back online in 6 months and having everybody back to work. Like, it was really a powerful insight. So we said, why do you think that they can't travel outside the tri-state area? And one client said, well, I think like maybe 20 years ago, somebody put in their employee handbook that they could not travel without XYZ's approval, and that person's no longer in the company. And I was like,
Amazing.
we find stuff like that all the time. I mean, all the time, where companies are built based on decisions. And inside of these 10 assets, those decisions get made. Well, that was a barrier. That was a sales barrier. It was an operational barrier. It was an HR barrier. It was a leadership barrier, right? But it was never going to get found, changed, or distinguished.
That's amazing. Yeah. It is funny to think about the things that show up in handbooks and that show up in process that well-meaning employees will just follow, and even high-performing employees, they'll question, but it's like, well, that's just the way it is. So that's why it's important to bring in sometimes an outside voice, outside set of eyes, outside team to consider things. And you've created something that I think is really interesting. That's a teachable framework for all this, because this is a pretty nuanced thing. If we're talking about 10 assets, we're talking about your business and your brand and your positioning and your value themes and all of this. You created Clarity University. What drove that building? What drove that decision to make this complex thing into, like I said, a teachable framework?
So we had started educating people on the 10 assets themselves. We had noticed that inside the small business sector, that very, very few people had access to any solutions or the 10 assets themselves. So you might be a business owner and you operate it every day, and somebody sold you a capabilities piece, and you've been using that capabilities piece now for 10 years, but that isn't even what you sell anymore. So it's hard to hire a salesperson. So now I can't solve my sales. So now I think I just have to close my doors. Like when you said that, that's exactly the example I thought. And this piece of paper that at one time had relevancy just had shifted, but the owner didn't understand or know that audiences shift all the time. Look, we just had a bunch of new executive orders come out that shifts everybody's business. That happens every 4 years. It happens all the time, right? Regulatory compliance, adoption, technology, sociographic changes, all those things affect the audience. And if you don't pay attention to what's going on inside of the audience's behaviors and their realities, then you start to become irrelevant. And so what we saw was each of these assets were just sort of like under the surface of business leaders. And you could have a business of $500,000 and you're trying really hard and you're working really hard, and it's never going to change for you because something inside of an undefined asset is just holding you back. And so we started to really feel strongly about just educating people that those 10 assets are there. Here's an education on it. This is what the 10 assets do. if you have control over your goal and you understand your objectives to be smart and time boxed, then you know when something's not working, then you can make an adjustment in your audience. Consider if you have to reposition. Now you can say, am I still promising and delivering what I did? If clients don't value it, what do I need to change about that? And here's 3 questions you can go ask. Like, it was a very simple education. COVID hit, and we started getting asked to, we were doing webinars of like 1,000 people at a time on different coasts. It was the next big pain point after a lot of like the PPP money got distributed. People froze because they were like, well, I don't know exactly what to do with this to make sure that I can stay inside the forgiveness realm. And it was really like, it was something that happened that was completely out of our control. We just started educating at volume. Well, you get off of a webinar with 400 people and you're going to get 30, 40 calls of people who want an hour of your time. And we don't have that infrastructure. We're, we're a high quality but small team. And it just, by the time we would like take that in, figure out how to bill for it, was just like, and I can't spend all my hours freely giving away, I got to run a business. I still have to do my job. So we felt really bad. And we would come out of conversations and say, like, there's got to be a better way. Like, we have to be able to make what we do affordable for people. And there was really all these like great ways that we tested that were great for other people and horrible for us. Like, people were getting the benefit and we were going bankrupt, crying, like,
Sure.
how does this work for them and not us?
Yeah.
And we must have tried about 4 or 5 models, and we ended up having a partner that allowed us to test something. And we did it in a group setting, and we created what we saw was year over year. So we tested it for a two-year period. Year over year, what we saw was the same thing. They needed education, which is the first week. They needed tools. So we had to give them things that they could walk away with, argue, struggle, talk about with other people, have concrete conversations with. We needed to give them exercises. They needed support. So you don't realize when you're going through a brand strategy evolution that there's a lot of hard moments. It's hard work. There's a lot of doubt, resistance, denial, anger, frustration. Like, you're letting go of a lot. You're leaping into the future. There's a whole like emotional journey people go through, even though it's technical. So how do you give someone that support? And then the last thing was, and it's the most expensive, was how do you test it? Brand strategy testing is expensive, sometimes more expensive than the brand strategy process itself. So, if you have a primary audience that has 2 or 3 personas inside of it, that's a good $40,000, $50,000 research project. So how do you give that to business owners that are already in pain? And so the 4th week really not just allows them to test it with other people, but also to get comfortable with the language, the word, the messaging, which is usually the hardest problem. People will invest in brand strategy and then they come out and they go, but what are the words that I use? And it's heartbreaking because they're like, well, I just spent all this money, but I don't know what to do with it now. And so that 4th week, which I was super opposed to, our team innovated against that over and over and over, has really turned out to be the gem. It's sort of where the business owner finally gets to really feel good about the business that they own, the way they talk about it. They get validation that comes not from our team, but from other people. And it just became something that was saleable. But it was hard to create that.
That's super cool.
And people ask all the time, like, are you worried that people will copy it? A lot of it's copywritten, or copy protected. But, there's so much need out there. If someone can achieve the same thing that we're doing out there, go for it. It's just, it's so painful to watch business owners not be able to feel good about the businesses when they go to talk about it. So,
yeah. Well, and you can't fake it either. With the content that's in there, I'm sure is clearly developed from your years of experience, your hundreds and thousands of interactions with brands. And so the hard work that you're talking about, again, is so nuanced, and pushing people through these things, supporting them, but also pushing them and helping them help themselves is something that is not just a ChatGPT response. Like, this is a real technical thing. I'm just curious for anybody listening that's curious about this. Is it fully self-serve platform? I know you said there's like a community aspect, it sounds like. Could you tell me a little bit about kind of how people would interact with this?
So the first week is a group education, and you get a workbook that you can either type inside of or discard. We've also gone through like multiple iterations of trying and testing different platforms for the workbook. Um, I think we're about to come out with a new one in the next few months. But so there's a workbook, and when we take people through the education, there's about 7 exercises that we've tested over time that are neuropsych oriented to allow you to let go of what you come into uh, the experience with. And the neuropsych exercises, they're really important because you're able to instantly see feedback. Like you can see if you're breathing your own fumes, or you can see how other people are responding. You can see how we respond to people. And in that session, in the educational session, it's a group webinar. Everybody's on it together. Everyone can talk, everyone can participate. But what we're really doing is preparing people to go and execute those exercises themselves. At the same time, we're helping everybody not start from a white space. We're removing the intimidation of going it alone. The second week, you can sign up either for an hour of a strategy guide to just help you make sure that you're doing the exercises right. There's a lot of independence in entrepreneurs. Like, I do it myself. I want to do it myself. There's a lot of people who are like, I want to do it myself, but I want someone by my side the whole time. And then there's other people who are like, can you do it with me? And that has to be provided for. And so there's an option to do it completely on your own. There's an option to have a strategist go through it with you. And then there's an option where 2 strategists will join and they'll actually work with you to make sure that the assets are really delivering what you need. So it's a little bit more of a shared accountability. The third week, which I think is also a fantastic week, and I was again against this completely, but I love it now. It's a Q&A session. So by that point, you've talked to your employees, you've talked to your clients, you've worked with the strategist, you've argued with yourself. You come in, and most people are mad at the workbook. But they won't ask questions. So we've learned over time what questions people actually really have, like in the back of their head or in the pit of their stomach. And so we'll use those prompts in the session. And each prompt usually just cracks open a whole bunch of fear, anxiety, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, barriers that are going on, the beginnings of really starting to own and feel good about the brand platform that they're building. And in that session, we'll educate everybody on how to prepare for the last session, which is the test your message networking session. And it's called that very, very specifically. And we give people guidance on how to pitch. There's, conversations on how to kick the tires and test and feel good about it. And you can't really prepare somebody for the test your networking session. You come in, one person is like the guinea pig, they go first, and it just cracks open and it stops being ours and it starts being theirs. And what you see happen is that, maybe you and I are business owners in there. And I'm like, Sean, I heard you say in the Q&A that you really wanted to start selling on promise and value, not commodity, but your whole 11-second elevator pitch, which is your position and promise, is all about commodity. And I'm not sure what you're selling. And the important thing in that moment isn't that Sean just got feedback, which is great and highly valuable, but it's more that the other participant that gave you feedback, just actually embraced the methodology. And that is something that you can't sell someone that. They have to go through the process to get to it. And you just watch people come out. They are badasses. They are so proud. People who've owned businesses for 20, 30 years are like, I nailed that.
Yeah. Especially being able to take that away. If you do have an organization filled with people where you're going to have to turn around and be the face of it, pushing people to be able to teach it, to talk that, there is so much power in like a shared language, especially around this stuff and aligning on it. And that obviously leads to clarity. Aside from what seems like a really positive evolution of Clarity University and everything, obviously at Jayne Agency, what has you most excited right now as you face the back half of the year, other than educating everybody about how to seek brand clarity and all the executive orders and everything that's going on? What's got you most excited?
We have more and more challenges that are just hardcore brand strategy coming to us. So people might not know that's what it is, but they're finding their way to us with challenges that are hard to solve, but easy once you go into the methodology. So they're ruffled, they're concerned. And we know that as they go through that process, that it's going to ease up and it's going to become something that's their greatest power. But what we're also finding is that a lot of those business owners have multiple things, entrepreneurs have multiple things going on. So we're getting involved in a lot more family office. We're getting involved in a lot of multi-generation. So first generation really wants to lead this, but the second generation has this level of innovation. And I think part of that is coming because that's happening inside my own company. I have people on our team like Brad Pierce, who's been leading the company with me for years. And then we have another generation of people in the company, and one happens to be my daughter. And she's like, that's not how we're doing that. No. Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
Mom, that's not what we're doing. Brooke, no.
Nice.
And she has peers around her, and they're just as powerful and high performance as she is. And so people see that, and they're starting to say, like, wait a minute, I think I need to start planning for that. I need to give my next gen space to be able to run, or I'm not going to be able to plan legacy.
Yeah. Well, and clarity, obviously, like we've kind of nailed today, is something that leads to some great communication, much improved communication, and throughout business planning, that's huge.
There's a
People
couple
being
things
willing
on
to
Clarity
communicate.
University that are really exciting for me too.
Sure.
And again, this is the next gen sort of being like, okay, you're done. You're done saying no and you're done complaining. We've proven ourselves. We're adding on, we found that there's a huge need to help people understand how to use their brand platform as prompts for ChatGPT, how to stay away from just using scrape content to create original content. So how do you use that to leverage it? And what does that mean? We just launched something called add-ons. So after 2 years of resisting it, we saw in all of our surveys that came back from people in Clarity University that they wanted more. They didn't want to go through a whole Jayne Agency engagement of being committed to, $18,000 a month, but they still had need and they wanted to move their businesses along and they had done the hard work. And we started to say, you know what? So we created a system of add-ons based on user feedback, and it's awesome. So if you need an hour, once you've come to Clarity University, you can book that hour. If you want to solve something, which is like, you're like, okay, well, I'm heading into a conference and I want to be able to present myself on the conference floor the way I want. You can sign up with a strategist that you like through Clarity University, and you now have a 3-month run rate, but you don't have to worry that there's like this long committed something that your business can't ever live up to, which is what kills so many business owners. And so it's just a pathway for small and mid-sized businesses. And we're seeing that it's not even just small businesses, but like a CMO might want to just solve something and doesn't want to get involved in dealing with the retainer in the agency, but they know what they need. They just want to get through it and get it done. And it's being used in ways that we didn't expect. So that's exciting.
That's super cool. I love that. If somebody is like me and they're saying that's super cool, I love that. Where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more about Jayne Agency, and where can they sign up for and get into Clarity University?
So the pathway into Clarity University is really easy. You can go to jayneagency.com. There's a whole subsite for Clarity University. There's an assessment tool. So just go to jayneagency.com, Jay, don't forget the Y, JAYNEAGENCY.com. And you can hop into the assessment tool. It will guide you through a couple questions. It's just good to like see what those happen to say. The questions inside there have been based on 500,000 points of research. So it's usually much more correct than any of us are. And that will drop you right into the package that you need. And it's an easy credit card swipe. The dates are all out there. It's easy to project and plan ahead. What we see is that people are really concerned about the bandwidth. And so we say, just take a look at the time that is on the Clarity University website. It'll tell you how much time, and you want to just make sure you'll be able to put some time aside, but it really opens up a lot of bandwidth. So that's how you can get into Clarity University. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, often, and you can reach out to Jayne Agency. clarity@jayneagency.com is a good email to use.
Amazing. Yeah. And we'll link everything in the show notes, of course, if you're on YouTube or Spotify. Brooke, thank you so much for sharing not only your time, but also your wisdom with us. This has been a really enjoyable conversation for me, and I hope as well as to anybody listening out there. So thank you so much.
And I just want to say I'm such a fan of Lucky Orange. I'm a daily user. I
Amazing.
had to say that.
Amazing. We love it. Well, and hopefully we are living up to our promises as a brand, and we'll continue to push our own selves for further clarity. So, Brooke, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Lucky Orange Show. Before we go, if you haven't tried Lucky Orange yet, head over to www.luckyorange.com for a free 7-day trial of our leading conversion rate optimization toolkit. What's in that toolkit? Well, let's start with session recordings and heat maps. With session recordings, you can watch a full playback of an entire visitor journey on your website. Everywhere they click, scroll, move, everything they do in your site, a full playback. So you can see what's getting in the way of conversions and what is getting people over that finish line to convert. With dynamic heat maps, you can see the average visitor behavior on a page. So you can see clicks, moves, and scrolls. You can see how far down the page the average visitor is scrolling. And if something is below that line, that means that more than 50% of visitors are not seeing that. Lucky Orange also offers tools like live chat, announcements, and surveys so that you can communicate with your website visitors in real time. So again, if you have not tried Lucky Orange, or if you're not a user yet, head over to luckyorange.com, check it out, 7-day free trial with no credit card required. If you're a Shopify store owner, head over to the Shopify App Store to download the Lucky Orange app to your store today, as well as BigCommerce, HubSpot, Square, and many more. Check us out, and happy optimizing.